As Neil said, thank you. We are taking a different approach. We're trying to pioneer SMB marketing through social media recommendations. What I want to do, though, is I want to start out with the top 5 lift facts, which you all know, obviously, is my least favorite things about presentations at conferences. So number 1 is the excessive use of acronyms. That really bugs me. 1 laugh, 2, not bad. Okay, the use of beautiful but unrelated imagery. That's something that I think is completely unnecessary. Number 3, asking everyone to stand up. I'm not going to ask you to stand up, but I know when I'm sitting there, I always feel like, let me just sit here and drink my coffee. So that's number 3. Number 4 is the animation peekaboo, slowly but surely letting you see the rest of the bullets on a slide. And then number 5 is pontificating. So talking about what the future is going to look like in 10 years, where is the industry going to be? That always seems to bug me. And so with that, let me tell you where I think the industry is going in 10 years. All right. It's early. Wanted to get things going a bit. The real focus for me and kind of the goal for today is to talk about social. And it's something that there's a lot of discussion about, and we all understand social media platforms are important. But when I think about the evolution of local search, there's this sort of stages that we think about. So there's, we started off going from the traditional print to online. So, that we all, or many of us have experienced. And then going from online, there's starting to be this new wave of innovation. And so we've heard some excellent things. This is my first conference, by the way. I've learned a ton. It's been like drinking from a fire hose. We've learned about how to approach SMBs, new tools, new suites of products, really new ways of thinking about it. So that's very exciting. One of the things that we've heard about is local on demand. And so this concept of being able to just with the push of a button immediately get the service that you want or the product that you need, and it's wonderful. It's very powerful. We think it's going to affect us, it already has, and probably everybody in this room to some extent. But local on demand is really something which fits a certain type of search. We think a lot about the notion of commodity. So if you're hiring a taxi, it doesn't matter so much what car you get, you want to get from point A to point B. So on demand is a terrific convenience for the user, but it's more in the commodity space. If you're ordering groceries, Alon talked about that yesterday. It's a tremendous convenience to the user, to the consumer, if I can order my groceries, but as long as the milk shows up and the cereal is there, I'm happy. When we think about local search, it's not just about these categories where there's a commodity, it's also about categories where you really care who the service provider is or what the experience is. So here, if it's a personal trainer, that matters to you. If it's somebody who's coming to take care of your child, that matters to you. So when we think about the notion of local search, there's a lot that is focused around the notion of trust. How do people make decisions? And I should add that much of our focus today, I think, or in this conference, we talk about approaching SMBs and how can we help them sell, and that's important. We have to think about the end consumer also. What's important to the end consumer? And when they're making decisions, they want trusted information. They want transparency. They expect it. This has changed. Well, it's always been true, but they understand that they have access to it. And so when you think about trust, you think about what is information that a user can take with them and how will they make an ultimate purchase decision. And so we think that there's a kind of a mini framework, really, that when users look at this stuff, there's kind of, I'll just move over here for a minute, there's 3 things, or 3 vectors. There's a category that matters, customer matters, and circumstance. What I mean by that is, in certain categories, like I said, if it's a taxi, that may matter less, the notion of trust. But if it's a pediatrician taking care of your children, it matters more. Similarly with customers, you have certain types of people that are researchers. They want to have all the information. They're not willing to just choose the first option and then go. They want to be able to really choose based on good information. And then, of course, you've got circumstance. It may be one thing if you're building a house and you're hiring a locksmith. You want somebody that you can trust and that you can, has the master key to your house. If you're stuck in a parking lot and it's late at night and you're locked out of your car, you just want somebody who can get there quickly. So this whole notion of trust is really built into what we think about in terms of developing a solution. And the solution that we've built is something which is it's a destination site, but the ultimate kind of power of this goes to the SMBs. It's a way for them to be able to represent themselves well. So I'm going to give a demo in a second, but I want to just point out a couple of numbers that we think demonstrate with a little bit of data some of the trends that are driving toward this whole notion of social and trust. So the first thing is 30%, this is US data, that 30% of SMBs are planning to spend less on outside consultants and marketers in the next year versus what they did last year. The second thing is people are spending less. The small businesses in the US anyway, 2013, they about 44% spent less than $1,000. That's going up close to 56% in 2015. So they're spending less, which is strange. There's all these great tools. Why are they not investing more? And then the last one here is the one that I think is really interesting, the 73%. 73% are using social media, which in some sense is obvious, but think about, you've got dry cleaners in here, you have shoe repair shops. I mean, this is everybody, and they're all using social media. And one of the things that we hear from them is that they're using social media because this is the way that customers are finding information now. They understand that it's not about just the old kind of traditional, I put out an ad and something happens. I need a way to be able to connect. And this idea of creating and deepening relationships with customers is all about social. I just talked to a guy, he's a mover. He has a small moving company in near Seattle, Washington. And so he said to me, you know, people don't trust ads anymore. They don't believe what people say in ads. People believe what they can see and what they hear from people they know. So he says, instead of spending money on buying ads, what I do is I pay my movers $5 if they can get a picture of a happy customer at the end of a move. Interesting. He says, I'd rather invest in that. He says he pays them $10 if they can get a review at the end of a move. So what he's doing is he's putting money into this way of being able to connect with customers and getting kind of a relationship with them. So how do you harness the power of this thing? Clearly we all understand reviews. We understand that whole notion. We know Facebook pages, there's 45 million Facebook business pages today. And I don't know if you're all aware, probably some of you are, Facebook actually measures your responsiveness, how quickly you respond to customers when they send a message. So as a small business owner myself, when somebody sends us a message, I respond immediately, day or night. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get dinged on Facebook. That's how people are making connections. So we think about this concept of being able to harness the power of social, but doing it at a level that scales. So what I want to do is quickly go through what we've built. You can feel free to just shout out questions if you want. I want to go through this reasonably quickly, and then I'm happy to also go through a kind of a live demo afterward. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking public conversations on social media, and we're converting those into structured business listings with recommendations. So what we do is we start off with the social media themselves. So we're listening for public conversations on Facebook, on Twitter, on Yahoo groups. We'll be adding other platforms in the coming months and quarters. And basically what we're doing is we're looking for patterns. So we've built a pretty sophisticated machine learning capability. What that does is it looks for paradigms where people are asking questions. For example, there's a mom's group in Houston. One woman writes, I just moved to town. I need a pediatrician for my 1-year-old. Anybody have any recommendations? Right, and what happens is a lot of people will write back and say, sure, you know, we've been using Dr. Johnson for years. She's amazing. So that's great, but it turns out that most of the questions that people ask, or I should say it differently, most of the times that the kind of the basic keywords get asked or get used, they're not about asking for recommendation. It can be about all sorts of other things. People use doctor and plumber and who knows what for all sorts of things. So the kind of the bit of the magic is in identifying those patterns where people are asking for recommendations. Then what we do is we search through the responses. It turns out that about 8 or 9% of people will respond back with a recommendation to a provider. What I mean by that is if somebody writes, hey, my refrigerator is broken, you know, can you suggest someone I can call? Most of the responses are things like, so sorry to hear, or, you know, good luck, or let me know if I can help, which is nice, but it doesn't help you. Doesn't help you get an appliance repair guy. Now notice also that the person didn't say, I need an appliance repair pro. They said my refrigerator is busted. So we need to use a little bit of sophistication in being able to understand their intent and then be able to look through the responses. And then what we're trying to identify are the either business contact information or name that we can parse, and then we go out to the web and we try to build a profile for this business. So that's really stage 2. We create profile pages for each business or for any business that we can match up with the recommendation. Now here too, there's a lot of potential for error. This is all unstructured data. It's very messy. So a classic example is somebody will say, you know, I use Dr. Johnson. She's great. Here's the phone number. Phone number could be for a clinic. The clinic could have 30 doctors. if you're not careful, you may pull just automatically, one doctor's name from that thing if you're doing it automatically and get it wrong. And then a person's looking for a pediatrician and they get a cardiologist, and that's no good. So we use this process we call kind of a fingerprinting. It's, we look for multiple points where we match to make sure that we're correct, and then we build a business profile page which has the information. I'll show you that in a second. The second thing we do is we aggregate these results. So by city, by category, we may have hundreds of recommended providers, and what we do is when a user searches, on Google, they'll say, I need a handyman in Seattle. We'll create a page which has just handyman in Seattle, and you see a full list of them, and the recommendations are attached. So I'll show you that in a second. The part of the power of this is that the information now becomes the asset. And this is where I think it's more relevant for you, and part of the reason that I'm here, is that this is information that really is difficult to find anywhere. We're going the last mile of the social recommendation, and because we're aggregating it in a unique way, this is something that really doesn't exist in other places. So certainly in search and SEO, this is very powerful, but also word of mouth. When people hear about this, the providers themselves, when they hear that they've been recommended, they get very excited, and so they want to come. And this creates quite a few revenue opportunities. So I'll talk about these in a little bit. We've created a concept of a premium profile, which the business can add more information to that page that's already been created. There's also lead generation capabilities, of course, because people come and they're very motivated. And I'll talk about those in a bit when I describe some of what we've done so far, which is really to validate. But the thing I think which makes sense is just to show you kind of very briefly how this looks. So it's a little bit small, I apologize. But like I said, somebody may do a search on the web, they'll come, and what they'll see is a listing of pages, right? So they can either get introduced, that's a lead gen that we're testing out, or they can browse the full listings. And when they do that, I don't know if I have a pointer here, but you can see that there's a listing, the Kendo list handyman services, and the social media is integrated directly into that listing. So we've got the business name, and then you've got the question. So this question here is, can anyone recommend a trustworthy and reasonably priced handyman looking for someone to do a few things around the house? Okay, and this is a Facebook referral from January 21st, 2015, so we always give you the kind of the source conversation. And if you go to the search results, and this is just a kind of a zoom in, what I want to point out is that we're really trying to distill information. There's so much of this kind of unstructured data out there that we have to pull it together. So we create a business listing, and then what we do is we create a relevancy ranking. Now this is for the purpose of making sense of the data. So this ranking up here, you see the 9.5, there's actually 14 or 15 different factors that we use to create that relevancy ranking, but the ones that are most obvious are the location, the ratings, the recency. So the user has a sense for how powerful are these social signals. You'll notice also that we have a view profile button that takes them to the business page, and then we've also got the phone number because we're all about integrity, transparency. We want the user to be able to find the information that they're looking for, and we believe that ultimately that benefits both sides of this equation. Okay, so the user then says, fine, I want to click on Camerata Pediatric Dentistry, and they go to the profile page. So this is what I was describing earlier. And here what you can see is there's quite a bit of data. I'll point out that this claim profile button here has not been clicked or not been selected. So as far as we know, the business hasn't come here at all, or not yet. And still, there's quite a bit of information. So of course, we've got a map. We have the different sources where we've pulled recommendations from. And then there's phone number, there's URL, there's email, there's any information that we can gather. And part of the way we capture this is that the recommendations have a series of these different contact information. Some people give email, some people give URL, some give phone number. So we're trying to pull all these things together. Now, what I love about this is that when you look at the kind of the core, the raw material here, it's great. There's no replacement for this stuff. So you go in and you see this profile, and these are just, I pulled from the page so I didn't have to scroll through. On January 8th, 2014, anyone have a favorite pediatric dentist, et cetera, et cetera? Ellen says, we go to Dr. Rita Camerata near the village. I love her so much. I drive in from Cyprus, not sure about spaces you can call and ask. Next one says, the best of the best is Dr. Camerata, not kidding. And then she describes, it's like Disney World. I mean, imagine describing your dentist like Disney World. That's an endorsement there.